In the spiritual journey of a retained man, someone who preserves his vital life force, his essence, there is a silent transformation taking place. This is not merely about physical abstinence, it's a rising of consciousness, a return to inner stillness, and a strengthening of divine masculine energy. The more a man retains and refines this power, the more he begins to radiate a frequency that is uncommon in today's world. Women, whether consciously aware or not, sense this shift in energy, and instinctively they test it, not to destroy it, but to understand its authenticity. In the spiritual language of nature, the feminine seeks the real, the grounded, the unwavering. These tests are not about manipulation or games. They're deep energetic checks, subtle examinations of whether the masculine energy in front of her is rooted or simply wearing a mask. A retained man becomes a mirror to the feminine, reflecting to her both her inner chaos and her longing for a pillar of safety and stillness. So she pokes, she pulls, she challenges, not out of disrespect, but as a dance of truth. She wants to know, is this man truly what his energy promises, or is he another performer in a spiritual costume? This dynamic is crucial to understand because if a retained man is not aware of it, he may become frustrated, reactive, or even disillusioned. But when understood from a higher spiritual lens, it becomes a beautiful interplay of growth. The tests are not obstacles. They are invitations to go deeper into presence, to become more conscious, more rooted in his essence. And when he passes them, not with arrogance, but with stillness, something divine opens between them. Trust, surrender, and spiritual intimacy. So let's explore 9 subtle ways women test the energy of a retained man, not just in the physical world, but in the realm of vibration, aura, and soul resonance. And more importantly, let's understand why these tests happen, not through the lens of ego or gender battles, but through the sacred dance of divine masculine and feminine energy. She challenges his emotional centering. One of the first subconscious tests a woman offers is emotional in nature. She may intentionally express erratic emotions, ranging from deep affection to sudden distance, joy to sadness, for no apparent reason. To the unaware, this might seem like instability. But for the spiritually aware man, this is a frequency test. She's asking, can you remain the calm in my storm? Can you hold your emotional ground without trying to fix me or run from me? The retained man has a powerful presence, not because he suppresses emotions, but because he has transmuted the energy of his sexual desire into emotional strength. He becomes an anchor, not swayed by waves. The feminine, chaotic by nature, seeks to crash against that rock, not to destroy it, but to feel it. She wants to know if he is truly grounded or if he only appears to be when things are peaceful. When a man on semen retention reacts emotionally, over-explains, or tries to dominate the conversation to regain control, he fails this test. But when he listens with stillness, responds with conscious awareness, and doesn't project his internal discomfort onto her emotions, he passes. She may not even realize why she suddenly feels more safe or drawn to him. It's because she's met true masculine containment. This test is not about him winning or her losing. It's the feminine seeking assurance that her emotional depths won't drown him. And in the journey of semen retention, where the energy of the sacral chakra is being elevated to the heart and beyond, this is where a retained man truly shines. Not in resisting her, but in lovingly embracing her storm with a still heart. She pushes boundaries to test his integrity. Another common but highly spiritual test is the pushing of boundaries, emotional, physical, or even moral. A woman may intentionally say or do something to observe his reaction. This isn't necessarily a conscious act of rebellion, it's an intuitive probe. Do you stand by your principles when tested, or do you bend to please me? Especially when a man is retaining, his aura gives off a rare quality: discipline, self-control, spiritual fire. Women subconsciously feel this and want to touch it. The boundaries may come in the form of temptations. She may flirt, initiate seduction, or even question his practices and spiritual path. Again, this isn't about disrespect. It's about seeking the depth of his yes and no. A woman doesn't want a man who is controlled by her beauty or her validation. She wants a man who can love her deeply while standing rooted in his truth. For the retained man, the discipline of semen retention builds not just physical control, but energetic clarity. He knows his path. He honors the divine within her without objectifying or submitting to lust. When he sets a boundary, he does it from presence, not ego. And this magnetic balance creates a powerful polarity. A woman feels safe, yet intrigued, by his clarity. Passing this test deepens the spiritual connection. It signals to the feminine that this man is not easily moved. He has wrestled with his lower nature and has chosen a higher path. And this makes him irresistibly trustworthy, not just in romance, but in the soul's evolution. She observes how he handles silence and space. In today's hyper-stimulated world, many people are uncomfortable with silence, especially in relationships. But the spiritual feminine, on a deeper level, craves a man who can hold space, not just through words or actions, but through presence. One subtle test women offer is simply watching how a man handles silence. Does he fill it nervously with chatter? Does he seek to impress constantly? Or can he be still, even in her emotional distance? A retained man who has learned to transmute his sexual energy into spiritual awareness becomes deeply comfortable in silence. His energy speaks louder than his voice. He does not chase connection because he already embodies it within himself. This is an extremely rare quality and feels mysterious to women, like standing in front of an ancient temple that whispers secrets without sound. When she pulls away slightly or gives space, she watches. Will he panic? Will he beg for attention? Or will he respect the rhythm of her soul? He allows her space without punishing her, yet remains energetically available and sovereign. She feels magnetically drawn to him again. It's as if his silence holds her, even in absence. This test is a doorway to higher spiritual love. The woman is not asking for distance. She's asking if the man can love without attachment, be present without control, and remain grounded when nothing is happening. In that stillness, divine trust is born. She questions his purpose and direction. The retained man is naturally purposeful. When sexual energy is not leaking outward, it ascends, fueling vision, passion, and clarity of mission. This inner fire becomes visible, not through words alone, but through the man's actions, focus, and spiritual aura. One of the ways women subconsciously test this fire is by questioning it, not out of doubt, but as a form of energetic calibration. Are you really living your truth, or is your path a fantasy? She may ask him about his goals, or she may challenge his routines. Sometimes she may even mock the spiritual path he's chosen, just to see if he defends it from ego or embodies it from truth. This is a sacred test. A man who is truly aligned doesn't need to prove. His direction is clear, not rigid, but unwavering. He walks with divine certainty. The retained man doesn't just speak of dreams. He moves with quiet conviction. He understands that his purpose is not separate from his spirituality. It is his spirituality in motion. When a woman senses this, her own feminine chaos starts to organize around his clarity. She feels inspired to rise, not because he pulls her up, but because he rises with such certainty that her soul naturally follows. This test, if passed, turns a relationship from romantic to spiritual. The woman no longer sees him as just a partner, but as a divine masculine force she can trust with her heart and future. She creates unpredictability to measure his inner order. The feminine principle is innately chaotic, fluid, and ever-changing. This is not a flaw, but her spiritual essence. So, one of the deepest, often misunderstood tests is her unpredictability. A woman may shift her moods, her opinions, or her desires without warning. To the unaware man, this can be infuriating. But to the spiritually aligned, retained man, it is simply the sacred river testing the banks that hold it. This unpredictability isn't manipulation. It's the divine feminine seeking a masculine energy that can remain internally ordered amidst her fluidity. The retained man, whose life force is no longer being expelled, but instead refined within, begins to experience an inner equilibrium. His nervous system becomes calm, his focus sharpens, and his sense of time becomes sacred. In short, he becomes the embodiment of order, cosmic, not controlling. When she changes plans, contradicts herself, or pulls him into emotional confusion, she is subconsciously asking, "Can you stay conscious, or will you be swept into my waves?" If he reacts with frustration, he fails. But if he responds with grace, sometimes even playful awareness, he communicates a deep message. "I am not trying to control you, and you cannot uncenter me." This is what makes the retained man not just attractive, but spiritually magnetic. She begins to feel not judged by her unpredictability, but held by his inner harmony. She realizes she can be wild, free, and expressive, and he will not shrink or break. This test opens the gates to true spiritual union, where polarity dances rather than clashes. She observes his energy in presence of other women. Another highly subconscious but spiritually rooted test arises when other women are present. The feminine psyche is deeply attuned to how a man distributes his energy, especially his attention and sexual magnetism. In a room full of feminine energy, a woman will naturally observe how the man she is drawn to behaves. Is he scattered? Does he subtly flirt? Does he energetically lean toward validation from other women? For a retained man, whose sexual energy is now sealed within and redirected to the higher chakras, his energetic presence is felt by all, especially women. He becomes radiant, but not needy, magnetic, but not hungry. And women feel this immediately. It stirs both curiosity and subconscious competition. The woman who is testing him wants to know, is your energy sacred, or is it still seeking to be consumed? She may provoke this test by bringing him into spaces where other attractive women are present, or she may directly mention other women just to observe his reactions. The spiritually grounded man doesn't flinch. He doesn't overcorrect or try to be overly righteous. His energy remains in stillness, acknowledging beauty without grasping for it. This test is pivotal. If passed, it builds immense trust. The woman sees that this man is not a boy controlled by lust, nor a cold monk who suppresses desire, but a sovereign being who has alchemized his desires into purpose and whose gaze is no longer fragmented. She begins to feel emotionally and spiritually safe around him, an experience few women truly receive. She tests his capacity to lead spiritually. In the modern spiritual relationship, the feminine is not just looking for romantic leadership, but spiritual leadership. She wants to feel that her partner is not just on a path, but capable of leading her into deeper awareness, higher truths, and soulful expansion. One way women test this is through subtle invitations to guide, initiate, or elevate their shared journey. She may ask questions like, "What do you think about this teaching?" or "Can we meditate together?" She may resist certain spiritual practices to see how grounded he really is in his. The point is not to judge his beliefs, it's to feel whether he's just intellectually spiritual or embodying divine consciousness. The retained man who experiences heightened intuition, and sensitivity from holding in his life force naturally begins to operate from higher wisdom. But this doesn't mean preaching or forcing. It means becoming a living embodiment of the teachings he follows. When she challenges him or appears less interested in his path, he doesn't react with judgment or superiority. He simply lives his truth, radiates his frequency, and continues to walk the path without needing to convert anyone. And this, paradoxically, becomes the most powerful form of spiritual leadership. If a man passes this test, the woman begins to look to him not just as a partner, but as a spiritual mirror. She feels herself growing in his presence, expanding, evolving, and the relationship becomes a sacred temple, not a battleground of egos, but a shared meditation. She creates conflict to test his alchemical power. Conflict is often seen as a sign of disharmony, but in spiritual polarity, conflict is a tool, a fire that refines. Women will sometimes create friction, spark arguments, or bring up past wounds not to create drama, but to feel the man's response to heat. In ancient symbolism, fire tests the purity of gold. And so, the feminine tests the alchemical capacity of the masculine to transmute tension into understanding, pain into love. For the retained man, this is where real mastery begins. His semen retention practice is not just about celibacy, it's about becoming a vessel for transformation. Through inner discipline, his reactive patterns are slowly replaced with presence, reflection, and higher perspective. So when she brings fire, he does not escalate. He does not withdraw. He receives it, feels it, and turns it into awareness. This doesn't mean passivity. It means conscious confrontation. He addresses the issue, but with compassion, clarity, and a deep respect for the sacred role of conflict. She begins to feel that nothing is too intense for him, that her rage, tears, or fears are not threats, but invitations to go deeper. Passing this test takes their bond beyond emotional love into spiritual healing. The retained man becomes not just a lover, but a conscious healer. He holds the mirror without judgment, helping her transmute her pain into power, and in doing so, rises further in his own sacred masculinity. She measures the depth of his love beyond physical attraction. Perhaps the most intimate and esoteric test a woman offers is this. Can you love me when I am not at my best? Can you see my soul, even when my body is tired, angry, aging, or distant? This is not a test of tolerance. It is a test of depth. The feminine wants to know if the masculine's love is conditional on her appearance, performance, or sweetness, or if it is anchored in soul recognition. A man on the journey of semen retention begins to access love that is beyond lust. His love is no longer dependent on physical gratification. It flows from a heart that has opened through sacrifice, solitude, and spiritual awareness. He sees the soul, not just the body, and a woman can feel this. She senses when his gaze penetrates beyond the skin into her divine essence. She will test this by withdrawing affection, showing vulnerability, or even appearing less attractive in moments. It is in those moments that she asks, "Will you still honor me? Will you still choose me? Will your heart still recognize mine?" If he does, not through performance, but through silent presence and genuine warmth, she melts. Something ancient in her soul begins to trust again. This is the highest test because it demands true spiritual vision. The retained man, who no longer chases pleasure, sees her not just as a woman, but as a sacred embodiment of Shakti, of the divine feminine. And in passing this test, he unlocks a love that transcends form, a love that does not bind, but liberates both souls into higher consciousness. The sacred dance. Women do not test retained men to challenge their worth. They test to experience truth. In a world of masks, noise, and confusion, the feminine is seeking the real. The retained man, through his path of self-mastery, becomes that rare being who does not sway with desire, who does not react from ego, who does not perform for attention. He is. And his beingness speaks louder than any word. The tests are sacred. They are invitations. They are not about passing or failing, but about revealing what is true. A man who meets these tests with presence, not pride, with love, not logic, becomes a spiritual warrior. Not because he conquers her, but because he awakens her, and in doing so, awakens deeper parts of himself. So to every retained man walking the path of spiritual growth, remember, she is not your enemy. She is your mirror, your muse, your initiator. Her tests are the fire, and you are the gold. Let yourself be refined, not for her approval, but for your own awakening. And in this dance of testing, stillness, love, and growth, something divine is born. A relationship not built on desire or fear, but on soul remembrance. A union that echoes the stars.